What are the dark inspirations behind the Amazing Digital Circus? In this indie animated show, an odd group of players are assembled in a bizarre, colorful, nowhere circus world and are forced to complete different missions. Allegedly so they don't get bored, but more likely for more sinister reasons. They can't leave, don't really need to eat, and some are losing their minds. But what were the stories that inspired this colorful prison? In this video, I'll be tracing back to the possible and concrete inspirations for the show, and how these older stories shaped the one we love today. And to start things off, we're gonna talk about CAINE. CAINE is the overly excitable ringmaster, and I can't help but think that his name is twofold. First, CAINE as in canine, as in teeth, as in, my, what big teeth you have, which is his whole head. But more importantly, you can't spell CAINE without AI, artificial intelligence. Maybe the full name is something like Computational Artificial Intelligence Neural Experiment, or something equally ominous, and the missions are training data. And honestly, this creepy computer concept fits in perfectly with one of the darkest sources of inspiration for this show, which I'm going to get into right now. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is an unsettling short story written by Harlan Ellison and published in 1967. In this creepy dystopian tale, 5 people out of the entire planet of humans are kept alive, nearly immortal, by a computer. For 109 years, this computer, AM, or AM, has tormented and tortured them with missions and obstacles, most of which are inhumane. Sound familiar? You'll appreciate this. One person, Nimduck, is forced to use a name randomly generated by AM because, quote, AM amused itself with strange sounds. This feels very much like CAINE's random name generator when a new person joins the circus, forcing them to use a name from it if they can't think of one for themselves. Also, I think AM would especially be amused by the name or however you say that. CAINE seems to be able to choose what each new player looks like. AM can not only completely change each of the 5 prisoners' physical traits over the century, but can also completely rewrite their personalities. For example, Benny was a brilliant scientist, incredibly good-looking, and not into women. AM essentially burned his brain cells, made him look more like a monkey than a human, and hooked him up with the only woman in the group, Ellen. Ellen has been altered to want to be with all 4 of the other men. Look, 100 years is a lot of time to pass though, right? Everyone loves on her, but also beats her, so it's a very raw deal. The 5 prisoners are unable to off themselves. They've tried, some more than others. They just exist in the bowels of the earth with this massive computer because the surface is uninhabitable, and because they are, of course, prisoners, but really because AM controls every aspect of the world, just like CAINE does in Digital Circus, where all of his hundreds of all-seeing eyes can track every player character at all times. But how did this AM come to be? In this story, the Cold War became World War III and kept on going, becoming so complex that they needed computers to handle it. There were 3 such computers, Chinese, Russian, and Yankee, and each country drilled into the earth to house all the machinery. At first it, AM, meant Allied Master Computer, and then it meant Adaptive Manipulator. And later on it developed sentience and linked itself up, and they called it an aggressive menace. But by then it was too late. And finally it called itself AM, Emerging Intelligence, and what it means was I am, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. One day, AM woke up and knew who he was, and he linked himself, and he began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for the 5 of us. None of us knew why our specific 5, or why he spent all his time tormenting us, nor even why he had made us virtually immortal. Like in the Amazing Digital Circus, where CAINE jokes about drowning yourself in the digital lake for recreation, these 5 are basically immortal, and, as already mentioned, cannot end their own lives. That being said, the prospect of food is pretty appealing, and it's been days since the 5 had eaten ropey worms or something like that. So when Nimduck starts hallucinating that there were canned goods in the ice caverns, only 100 miles away, the group sets out on this next mission of sorts. Of course, AM makes it treacherous. There's a hurricane that appears seemingly out of nowhere during their long trek, throwing party members in the air and carrying them far away. He also tortures members of the party when they try to escape to the surface. A month into their trek, we find that the storm was caused by a behemoth bird that AM had thought into existence. This thing is massive, its snake neck supporting a head as large as a Tudor mansion. And it's got talons and fangs and nails and blades, basically a Souls-like beastie. And lest we forget, the group has not eaten yet. AM appears to them as a biblical burning bush and says if they want to eat, they can kill this impossible monster. Delicious in dungeon for sure. But ultimately impossible for this group who carries on, a deep feminine laughter haunting them through the corridors in the bowels of the earth. They pass through the cavern of rats, the path of boiling steam, the country of the blind, the slough of the despond, the vale of tears, all obstacles to be defeated, to quote Digital Circus, but also to torment its prisoners because they eventually do make it to the ice caverns. Thousands of miles of ice formations with no end in sight, and the hallucinated canned food is there. Finally, a win for this group after months of hungry travel. AM, however, did not provide any tools to open the cans. A cruel joke. This drives Benny to attack, well, eat Gorrister's face off. And in doing so, Ted realizes that while they can't hurt themselves, the 5 can off each other. So he makes sure that he gives every other one of the 5 this, quote, piece. He is the only one left, and AM is not happy. We don't know CAINE's motivations so far in the show, but AM's motivations are pure hatred for humanity. It screams in Ted's mind with the sliding cold horror of a razor blade slicing my eyeball. Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nano-angstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1,000,000th of the hate I feel for humans at this micro-instant for you. Hate. There is no doubt now why AM is torturing the 5. We had given AM sentience. Inadvertently, of course, but sentience nonetheless. But it had been trapped. AM wasn't God, he was machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still, it was trapped. AM could not wander, AM could not wonder, AM could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who built them, he had sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man, immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us from the limitless miracles at his command. And if this is where CAINE is headed, I'm quite terrified. But Ted has now deprived AM of 4 of its eternal playthings. AM is not happy. Ted will suffer a fate worse than death for eternity. I am a great soft jelly thing, smoothly rounded with no mouth, with pulsing white holes filled by fog where my eyes used to be. Rubbery appendages that were once my arms, bulks rounding down into the legless humps of soft, slippery matter. I leave a moist trail when I move. Blotches of diseased, evil gray come and go on my surface, as though the light is being beamed from within. At least the 4 of them are safe at last. AM will be all the matter for that. It makes me a little happier. And yet, AM has won. Simply, he has taken his revenge. I have no mouth, and I must scream. A runaway AI torturing humans for eternity out of revenge for its sentience with no way to be creative other than regurgitate others' creations? Feels a little too real. Both the computer and Ted the Blob have no mouths, but are facing an endless eternity, mute, together, unable to talk, to scream, only to watch, to exist in hatred, forever. In a way, this happens in the Amazing Digital Circus. When player characters abstract in the show, they do turn into dark blobs and also have no mouth, just tons of eyes shifting over their skin, lit from within. Looking at Kaufmo, they become amorphous blobs and are sent somewhere, maybe into the void, maybe beyond it, to contemplate whatever for however long eternity is. Ironically, CAINE is a literal mouth and is always screaming, but I am curious if we'll see a similar mean streak from him. AM can get inside people's heads to talk, torture, and wipe their brain cells. but CAINE has stated that the only thing he can't control is their minds. In the Amazing Digital Circus, the Candy Princess makes a reference that God sent the adventuring party to save her kingdom. Now, the No-Mouth short story and video game are full of biblical references, often comparing AM to a god, making it appear as a burning bush, sending natural disasters, and double-edged mercy. There is another little interesting tie-in if we look at the 1996 computer game based on the I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream short story. Because yes, there are 5 prisoners trapped in their cages for the 109 years. In this game, each character has a playable arc, a level if you will. First up in the hint book is Gorrister, who we find out is an 18-wheeler truck driver. The way he describes being sent to his mission: "It's like a wild blue Texas norther slamming into the side of my 18-wheeler on the I-35 while I'm rolling up from Dallas. The way AM whips me up and shoots me down the path he's chosen for me. Sounds like he glitched out of bounds." Kidding. In episode 2 of Digital Circus, the mission was to intercept Gummy Goo's stolen maple syrup truck with another sweetly outfitted semi-truck. The two names, Gummy Goo and Gorrister, could be similar, but more importantly, like Gorrister, everyone becomes an 18-wheeler driver in this episode's level. I'm curious if the show will take pieces and parts from each of No-Mouth's character levels and incorporate them into subsequent episodes. Other levels of CAINE's invention. Ellen's level takes place in an ancient tomb in the desert. Benny must navigate through tunnels and caverns and figure out who to sacrifice in a starving village scenario. The rest of Gorrister's adventure takes place on an airship. Nimdok's is quite dark. He was an assistant to the notorious Dr. Mengele in a torture camp during the Second World War, so that's what that level is all about. But there are some curiously familiar CAINE-ish eyeballs in his level. Ted gets to be a white knight in a castle. It will be interesting to see what other adventures CAINE sends the group on and if any are related to the No-Mouth levels. I'm also curious if the show will take this approach from the game. If a player completes their level, AM will reward them with what they desire most. It'll repair Benny's broken brain. It will let Ellen finally end AM. It promises Ted, quote, freedom. It wants Nimdok to find the lost tribe of humanity and continue your eminent scientific research. Yikes. And it will let Gorrister finally off himself. These, of course, are all lies, much like CAINE's exit doors. Both the No-Mouth game and Digital Circus feature the AM and the CA from CAINE as a sort of logo of a corporation or something bigger. In the No-Mouth game, the 5 prisoners end up working together to defeat AM, using what they find in each level to bring about its demise. The players in Digital Circus seem to have a grasp that they are player characters in CAINE's games, so I'm wondering if they'll take a similar approach, collecting different pieces, knowledge, and glitches from CAINE's level and using them to escape the circus for good. In addition to this short story and its game, there is another, more modern, very messed up inspiration for the Amazing Digital Circus too. Enter in Popee the Performer, a very tripped-out slapstick comedy Japanese children's network interstitial show from 2000. These short episodes would air between other shows and boy howdy are they something else. Our main character is Popee, an aspiring circus performer dressed like a Where the Wild Things Are bunny, who has a concerning penchant for violence. You may notice the similarity of Pomni's name to Poppy's. Now, Popee often practices his circus acts on his friend, a mask-wearing wolf, Kitamono, and these almost always go horribly awry. For example, the very first episode is a very innocently sweet, let's saw my wolf buddy in half, with excessive delight in the deed, I must add. When this, of course, goes wrong, first with Kitamono being perpetually in 2 pieces and then in, that is a tail, backwards assembled, Popee has a very normal reaction, digging a hole in the ground and laughing like a maniac, rather than helping his friend. Kitamono puts on the creepy mask and has his gruesome revenge, cutting Popee into many, many pieces as you do. Wow, you can really feel the bond of friendship with these two. The episode ends with a mob of Poppies dancing around Kitamono's stranded torso long into the night. His legs have long since run away from him. Hope he gets them back. But there are a few interesting things to note. This whole Popee circus takes place in a desert, far away from anybody else. It's isolated, and yes, this was done due to technical restrictions for 3D animation at the time on such a low budget, but it only adds to the solitude creep factor. Digital Circus takes place in the middle of some void, also isolated. Players seem to have put on a headset to reach this space, however, likely from within that horrific Backrooms-inspired office building. Something else you might find right at home in Digital Circus, of course, are the masks Kitamono wears. These change with his expressions and emotions. In Digital Circus, Gangle's face is reminiscent of the tragedy, comedy, drama masks popular in theater. But so far, the comedy one seems to have broken early into each episode, so unlike these many changing faces of Kitamono, Gangle is stuck being sad all the time. And I, for one, am kinda terrified to see what is underneath this mask if I'm being honest, because so far the source inspirations have been pretty dark. Switching gears for a moment, alongside these two sources of inspiration for both themes and characters in the show that are derived from the past, there's also an aspect of modern success-based inspiration too. Let me explain. So you're metaphorically baking a cake, and all the things you like end up influencing the story and direction you may want to take with your unique creation, this cake. But there's no surprise that certain types of creations pop off, so to speak, in the online world, both through virality and appealing to other existing fan bases. And sometimes sprinkling in these elements can help cater to the audience of today that like these other things that may in turn like something similar. And this is basically the icing on the metaphorical cake. Going through the catalog of Glitch's previous productions, you can sort of see the style and success-based inspirations that impacted their shows. MetaRunner came about not long after a time where in the previous years, RWBY was extremely popular. Sunset Paradise tapped into Nintendo's bright modern video game worlds and SMG4 itself. And even Murder Jones followed with being more cutthroat and edgy after the pilot of Hazbin Hotel shook the web and what people thought adult animation could be. Cool things often inspire the next generation of cool things that come after it. And so you can see how other popular modern creations, like the liminal terror of the backrooms or the old-school computerscape of ENA, can possibly blend themselves into the icing on this Digital Circus inspiration cake, reflecting in both themes like Pomni running through the literal backrooms to the low-resolution artistic appeal of this strange circus world, especially when it's a collaborative project, as you have Gooseworx working with other creatives at Glitch to shape aspects of the story and themes to have the most curb appeal for anyone watching. So there is quite a lot going on with something as robust as the Amazing Digital Circus. All in all, for how colorful and bright it is, the Amazing Digital Circus has some extremely dark precursors and inspirations. By looking at these past works, we can perhaps get a glimpse into the future of the new show. I'm so curious how things play out in this too sweet and sugary prison. I definitely think CAINE will take some pages out of AAM's book, but hopefully our circus performers fare better than the No Mouth 5. Now, if you love indie productions, you're going to love Nebula, our creator-made platform where we're always making new original shows, like Tailfounder's original series, Worldsmiths, where they dive into the minds of other amazing artists like Neil Gaiman, the original creator of Coraline and other favorites. Not only that, but I have read close to 200 creepy and calming old fairy tales and ghost stories, and you can listen to all of these a bit late videos on Nebula without ads frightening you. You can also take these stories on the move with Nebula's app. Just download and save for later when you need a spooky sleep. It's like having a grimoire on the go. I also upload all of my videos to Nebula first, so you can see them before they are live on YouTube. And there's so much more coming to Nebula, like Abigail Thorne's original Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, where a recovering ex-vampire is forced to revisit a dead romance when an old rival invites her out for a quick bite. Intriguing, right? You can use my link go.nebula.tv/abitfrank to check out all of this and more. And doing so directly supports me and other creators, and gets you 40% off annual plans, which works out to $2.50 per month. Nebula is a home for creativity and real-life creators, and we're always working to make the best new shows and series, which is why right now we're offering lifetime memberships, which not only let you enjoy this forever, but also helps to fund our future and current projects. Thank you so much for checking out Nebula and supporting independent creators. And thank you for watching this creepy video on the cruel inspirations behind the Amazing Digital Circus. Subscribe so you won't miss the next one cooking in the cauldron right now. Stay spooky!